one in the main hall crashes constantly. We have to completely.
Oh, I know.
reset the
So,
System.
yeah.
What do you want for $50,000?
Okay.
Okay, I call this meeting to order. Approval of draft minutes from May 20th.
I sent a number of changes out to Kathy and Vim, primarily spelling changes. I can go through them.
I have probably the same ones that you have.
Happy to read through those real quick if you want, or it wasn't content related.
Like there was only one that. Oh, and then Adam made a motion.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, who the heck is Adam?
Yeah.
I don't know who that
I
is.
was scratching my head. I wasn't here, so.
I made a comment about, I feel like maybe it was Matt, but we should probably listen to the recording and.
Pretty sure.
Yeah, that would make sense, but somebody should probably just confirm.
Jim did send the doc file, which
Oh,
I
okay.
converted to pages, so if you all wanna, well, I already have partners, Christine, if you wanna just give me your changes, then I can make sure they're all made and.
Definitely.
I'll just-
Yeah, the only content thing was on page 2, letter K. They're offered that there may be concern of exceeding 3 sites on and shared. Oh, maybe that's just a typo. Never mind. I think it should be
On
on
a
a
shared, I
driveway.
didn't get that one.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, I'll just pass that down and then can compare.
You just wanna let Kathy take this, cause.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah, gotcha, thank you.
We want to vote on them or just? There's no content. It was all.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Second.
Okay, Adam, how do you, Matt, how do you vote?
Yes.
Yes. Abstain, because I was not here.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, minutes approved. Okay, work session. Welcome, Sarah. Welcome, Chief. Welcome, Mr. Road Agent.
How would you guys like to get started?
Well, they probably don't want to be here late.
Yeah, so maybe start with their questions.
Mhm.
Well, let's start with your questions, I don't know what they are.
I think that.
Why did they come?
Sorry?
Is that related to the solar though?
No, I think it was the
Okay.
PRD. There was questions that we had at the last meeting related to driveways and roads and,
Yep.
and as it relates also to fire safety.
So I guess you can start with fire safety, even though that's not specifically included in the chart of the changes right now, there is a bill that's moving through at the moment that's talking about, removing any restrictions for road length or number of dwelling units on a road, and I'm assuming this is all applicable to dead end roads, the language within the bill, like a little bit vague, leaving it up to communities, and I can't remember, you can have a maximum length on dead end roads. You may not, and
No.
this
I
might have.
know.
I think so.
It might not impact you, but this is something that can potentially come up, it could come up right now, but it can come up as the PRD is changed to hopefully allow for easier development. And so I guess the question is, would you be more comfortable if somewhere in the regulation, there's language that lives, you know, a road or driveway beyond X number of feet, there is a turnout for emergency vehicles, or
Is this going on the assumption that the town is going to accept these roads?
nope.
Okay,
But these standards could still be applicable, because even if the town does not accept roads, even if it's just a private driveway that's excessively long, there's still, I realize there's the waiver of municipal liability, but I think even when that's signed in a lot of instances, at least in other communities, probably here too, you're not just gonna let a house burn down.
Hopefully not.
Potentially, you know, and there's an option to include language to create standards to make a better environment for accessibility beyond what's currently in the subdivision regulations or the access regulations.
These guys, I just took the class, said to use strong language.
Strong language helps.
They said that if when you boil it right down to the point where you're ready to act, you just gotta put very strong legal language about liability on it. You can say, we would like you to do X, Y, and Z. And we probably would go put the fire out. But you make sure you say the town is not responsible for anything that happens. That was their point.
Was that the hard road to travel plan?
Yeah, that was great.
So is that generally the direction that you'd like to see it go? Just making sure that there's,
Strong language. Because we're not accepting the road, as far as the town, DPW is concerned, we're all set. But as far as the fire department, you can make suggestions. We're talking about this a lot before, we know.
And with driveways. Yeah, and unfortunately Murray has all that. I know you communicated with him.
Yeah. I mean, it honestly depends on how long the driveway is. We're only gonna bring up, 1 or 2 trucks up there, and then all the water supply and everything will happen at the end of the driveway. It's not like we're gonna be in and out of the driveway, so I don't think there really needs to be anything in there for us to be able to turn around all the time, per se, like if there is a fire up there. I think the only thing concern we'd run into is the length of the driveway, to make sure it doesn't extend beyond our capability with the hoses that we have. I have to look, I don't know exactly off the top of my head, I should, the length of hose that we have, but, somebody has, I'm just throwing something out there, a 2,000-foot driveway and we can't reach it. Well, now we have an issue. So I think that would be my only, concern with that, because like I said, normally. Engine is going up the driveway, we're laying the hose from the end of the driveway up, and then the water supply happens at the end of the driveway. Usually on the, the main road, whatever that. Driveway's off of. So. I don't think. We need to have any types of turnarounds or anything, or pull-ups in a driveway.
A private road, if there's,
Well, it'd have to depend on, yes, if it was a road, I wanna make sure we could get. Vehicles up and down. If it's a driveway, I think it doesn't need to be.
So
If that makes sense.
we're talking, I'm just wanna make sure I'm on the same,
yeah,
we're talking about PRDs
yes,
and roads
yes,
in a PRD,
yeah,
not driveways.
right, so
Right.
there's high density housing. I think some of the questions we had were about water source and accessibility as well.
while we're still on roads though, what is the narrowest width a road could be and still be passable by emergency vehicles?
Oh, I mean, whatever,
21,
let's see, what's a normal,
21 feet.
21?
Ken, you had said we have some issues or trouble with some driveways in town for plowing, where you've got to plow in and back all the way down.
Yeah, they're 12 feet. Right?
Yeah, so maybe that would be a reason to have a turnout.
But I would have no business going up there. That's why I'm asking.
If it's a private road,
If
yeah.
it's a private road or not. If I have to go up there, it's gotta be 21 feet.
Okay.
My plows are 14.
Mhm.
And then circling back to what Christine brought up, I mean, with fire safety, would you want a requirement that a development beyond a certain density install a fire pond?
that'd be fantastic. I mean, if we
What
could,
would that threshold be?
I think it depends on where it's located. If we have a fire pond near there. We're trying to install a couple here in town, so we have some more, but. I think it all honestly depend on where it's located and say, are we talking like condominium type developments? What kind of developments are we talking about?
There's nothing proposed.
Okay, yeah, no, I mean, if we had,
We,
No, but our regulations are proposing guidelines of potentially quite dense housing, so maybe not condos, but if workforce housing was developed, I think it can have six units.
Right now, it can have 6 units. You can back down to 5.
Yeah.
yeah, that's the
But-
state
So
RSA.
within one building, and then it could be grouped within that, so it could be a large development.
yeah, if we have a large development, yes, we should have some type of fire pond there to help us.
What do you consider large though? Like how many dwellings? Regardless of whether they're singles or condos or what have you. What would be, your comfort level?
Informal.
I'm gonna say 5.
Okay.
And
then-
then, obviously, it would all depend, you know what I mean, because.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like the solution is that we put in language that we consult with
yes.
the fire chief.
Yeah, you know, what I mean, if you throw in, I'm just throwing something up, the development with 5 mobile homes, I'm not worried about that as much as I am 5 apartment buildings.
Right,
You know what I mean, so I think it all depends on what we're talking about for development.
that makes sense.
By location, you're talking about if there's already adequate water supply in the area.
Right, yeah, you know, I mean. West Road, I mean, we have the one on West Road, we have a fire pond right there, so I'm just saying, they throw a development across the street, well, we already have a fire pond right there.
Right.
Now, could we add to that, so, make sure we have enough water, yeah, maybe we could do something like that, but, they throw something here in the center of town, I mean, there's no real water source close to here, so yeah, maybe I'll put one in. Yeah, it depends on the location where it is and stuff.
So would we want something, some wording that would say, during site plan review, the planning board may require a fire pond, something like that, like.
Or approval of the fire chief. Yeah.
Fire chief.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
All the tanks. What do they call this?
Cisterns?
Decisions, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
just
you
very
could-
in the language.
You could do one of that, or, yeah, on or something.
and the road agent still approves the roads and PRDs. Right, so,
Yeah, the road design, even if it's not gonna be adopted by the town.
Right.
It still needs to meet those standards.
mhm.
With the PRD though, I'm generally looking at, the housing is condensed.
Potentially.
Typical PRDs, you're typically not gonna see a PRD that has 1,000-foot driveway on one of the units.
Well,
Yeah.
Well,
but
you
it's-
could-
it depends.
Well, Stone Gate's an anomaly, that's not your
Yeah.
normal PRD,
Yeah.
that's Sarah Drive.
Right.
Right, that's short, yeah.
But they're not super condensed, like,
Not really. No.
no,
like they're on 2 acre, 1 acre, close,
We
so.
don't have a lot of good, we don't have a lot of examples.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's all these house bills pending to override local zoning. for
Yeah.
This stuff,
right.
so.
I looked at the Sarah Drive file, which I have with me if anybody wants to look at it, but there's no minutes in it, so I don't know what the conversations were at meetings. But it looks like that's a private road. I don't see any indication that it's a
So-
town road.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Do we plow it?
We plow it,
yeah, it looks like in
And
the,
pave it.
the covenant.
So it was never accepted by the town.
Well, as of 2004, when it was approved, it was written into their covenant that it was maintained by the residents, part of the HOA.
Crap.
But
Same thing.
something could have happened after 2004 it was voted on. I didn't see any indication of that in the file. Yeah,
Good question for Timmy, maybe too.
Yeah, I'm sure it was accepted because Bear, what is it, Bear Lane or
Bear
Bear
Run,
Head
yeah,
Lane?
yeah, yeah.
That is private and it's off that.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
that
so
one is
that's-
considered a common driveway.
Right, there's 2 units on that.
Yeah, two or, well, I feel like it, well, on the
2 or 3.
2 or 3, it might be 3, crosses another, yeah. But like, as I said, as of 2004, it was part of the homeowners association, but
But I think because we've maintained it, if you maintain roads, just the town just kind of takes them over.
You
Conversely,
accidentally adopt
conversely, if you ignore a road for 5 years, it goes to class 6.
Right,
So it's probably the same thing.
I don't know, I only looked as
I'm
of.
sure it was accepted.
So Stonegate, Randy's project.
Yep.
That was the first PRD we ever did in town. And I don't know, he built the roads up to roads, town road specs.
I would not accept them.
And,
If it was up to me, I would not accept
yeah,
them.
well, because of this,
They are way too steep.
Steep.
They're
But-
steep and they drop off.
Yeah. but other than that, he built them up, they're not 12 foot wide driveway, they're wide.
Class 5 standard.
Yeah.
But don't they
Yeah.
have to be for, like, just because it's a PRD doesn't mean you can build it, the road however you want, or is it?
It's usually because during the construction process,
Yeah,
the type of traffic that needs to get to it in
Mhm.
the first place, usually makes it so that it will
right,
be
they have to be, yeah,
Cement trucks. and-
right.
all the big
Correct,
stuff.
so, yeah.
That's the beauty of modern road making. Back in 1970, where everybody's driving is like this.
Yeah,
You didn't have a snorkel truck, you didn't have a cement next to you, all that stuff. They did that. So nowadays, it's much easier to have proper driveways because contractors just not gonna do it.
right.
Yeah. Well, that, we argued that point when we were discussing
Mhm.
driveways years ago was. We were worried about a fire truck getting in.
Mhm.
And I said, well, for goodness sakes, we get a logging truck in there, then we get a, dump trucks, and then we get a concrete truck, and then we get lumber trucks. They're all just as big as fire trucks. They all get in there.
Right.
So it makes sense that you'd be able to get a fire truck. in there.
Absolutely.
But we're talking about a different thing. We're talking about
Yeah.
roads, not
In a
driveways.
PRD.
We are also potentially talking about driveways, because even though the PRD is being expanded, it still could have, 2 units put on it. Similarly to how it's been used in the past, or 3 or something like that. In that case, we're not talking about a private road, but whatever standards are within the ordinance will be applicable to anybody who decides to build a PRD. So
There was also discussion about after having the stuff built, and it is private, that to have strong language by the town to say, we will never take this road over. Because what happens is they come back, or they sell their property, the next person comes in, oh, we don't want to maintain this road.
Mm,
And they come to the town and they want us to do
And
it.
it's our burden and the taxes and to
Oh, it's huge purchase.
bring up the,
Worn out.
standards,
Bring it up to a better standard, just to
Yeah.
get in there.
Also, select board hat, if we are plowing private roads, that's a huge liability.
Oh, yeah, that's
So
ridiculous.
we should not be doing it.
You should have seen the look I got when I explained my situation.
About some of the roads that we have.
I'm not supposed to be in a period.
well, it's too bad there's not more information about that Sarah Drive project because. A builder would not have paved that road if they didn't have to. So a PRD, you don't have to pave. So to go ahead
Yeah.
and pave that, it must have been taken by the town. It had to,
It had to be.
had to.
Well, yeah, and wasn't that Tim's requirement? At a certain point, Tim's requirement to build was you had to pay.
That's in some, I don't know.
Yeah.
Misremembering, I'm confusing the driveway maybe with the road, but I feel like when we read through the driveway, I thought it was a requirement
And
to
we
pave.
changed that, I think, or that was one thing that we proposed to change.
Yeah,
To not pave a driveway on a dirt road. Not
Right.
require paving a driveway on a dirt.
Yeah,
road.
you drive for a mile and a half on a dirt road, then you make them pave a driveway.
Yeah. that doesn't make any
So
sense.
there are the developments down on 45, down by the elementary school.
Glen Drive.
Yeah, those are paved.
Yeah, I just paved them again.
And those are
Oh,
town,
those are town roads.
those are town roads, yeah.
We accept, but they're beautiful.
Well,
They
they
were
are.
done correctly.
Very nice roads,
That
but
was Sancan Homes that did that.
you know, how come we accepted the roads? I mean, really?
I don't know, we'd have to look back.
Well, that's a conventional, that's a conventional subdivision. Those are all 3 acre lots with
Yep.
300 feet of frontage.
Mhm.
Those aren't PRDs.
Right.
Right.
but they built the road.
Yes. they
Yeah.
did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
while we have you guys here, I might ask if we could shift gears to, sort of safety and safety factors and where driveways, developments, roads and all of that are, because one of the things we're gonna be discussing, if we get to it tonight, is the possibility of an overlay district to allow for denser development in certain parts of town. Now, previously, we had kind of discussed this as something that would make sense on exclusively state roads because they would manage the access. So you wouldn't need to have technical expertise within town to determine if it's, you know, a safe turn and that sort of thing. But, you know, with you, I'm assuming you probably deal with, traffic accidents in town. Are there any places that are like definitely terrible to add more traffic that you could comment on, or places where you think it wouldn't matter so much? I know, really putting you on the spot.
Well, the accident at the stop sign of 45-101 today.
Yeah.
Oh, there was.
Yeah,
That we don't sign.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's probably one of the most dangerous intersections in
I
town.
was, that's
I've
the-
crashed there both
but
hasn't I?
As dangerous as it is, I mean, we really don't have a lot of accidents.
No, we don't.
You know, it's, most of them are on 101 itself, you know.
Access to West Road is dangerous. If we have any access to new access to West Road,
West Road, yeah.
it's that road up there by Perkins and Foster and Blood. If we were to add housing in those three roads, you'd have an accident.
Yeah, there are a couple of intersections around.
Yeah,
It's more
North
the
Road,
intersection, right?
yeah,
That are
North Road here
the,
comes around Webster. There's a yield sign. And I've been almost hit
Yeah.
multiple times. It just fly right through there without even looking. So that's potentially a problem area. And there's land becoming available.
but, I mean, it's one of those things that, I mean, you could really say any area really is,
Sure.
it all depends on the drivers, you know, you said, I mean, they just
Right.
blow through yield signs, I mean. You know, in my opinion, I mean, there was a big thing about the 101/45 intersection when Ben's went in, there'd be a lot more accidents.
Yeah, no, it's not.
There hasn't been, so, you know what I mean, so I don't, I really think it all depends on. The drivers, I mean, yeah, West Road, if we get more, yes, but I mean, we still have a lot of traffic that goes through there, going up to Sharon and, you know, cutting through, so.
Well, we just had
Yeah.
a traffic study done, the state and Southwest Regional. And one of the radar vendors came in and did a whole analysis of our roads. We don't have any kind of traffic issues here. We have apparently one of the safest set of roads in the state. And we don't have a bunch of speeders either.
Sure, okay.
The radar-
Yeah, there's no big fight.
Sure.
Yeah,
Our speeds were all, people basically go 10 over.
I was passed on West Road.
Yeah, there are, of course, there are,
Really?
of course,
But it's legal.
It's legal.
that's right.
It is, I actually, I talked to Chief Patag, and it's legal
Absolutely.
because there's no double yellow lines on that road, so it's legal to pass.
Wow,
If someone's going 20 miles an hour, I'd pass them.
I was not going 20 miles an hour.
Now, if it's smart, that's a different story, but yeah, he says, if they saw somebody passing, as long as they weren't, you know, like 50 miles over the speed limit, they would not stop them.
They were definitely,
Okay,
Or
exceptions.
Yeah,
yeah,
but,
So an area in town for an overlay district, which, you know, would be basically an area we would designate as an area to be developed with a higher density of housing,
Mhm.
it could be.
could be,
Preferably off a state road
and preferably off 101,
101.
you know.
or 45.
Or-
That's why they get them.
so I was saying like Webster, like kind of getting down towards your house, and the road's a little narrow down there, you get a lot more traffic down there, that would become an issue.
Yeah, there's not a lot of land, but there is now a big chunk of land that's available up North Road.
Okay.
Yeah, that's gonna be.
The very-
already preparing that for paving. Already.
Are we talking about the Berry Farm?
Yeah.
I've currently made it 23 feet wide now.
Okay. So that could become a high traffic area.
Yeah.
And Boo's got her property up for sale, not that anybody could build much there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's all wetlands around there.
the access would be off Mr. Berry's class 6 section.
Mhm,
They'd have to make a bridge,
mhm.
but then you'd be in. If you're a developer, you're like.
It's mostly like the back roads. You know, where is it, one off Converse, going towards Lambert, the dirt road up there was
That's north.
North Road, yeah, you know, like out
Mhm.
roads like that, you get a lot of traffic out that way, Converse Road. The ones that are a little bit smaller would be the,
Right, and that's where there's actually land available to develop.
So you're saying yes or no out there, I'm having.
no, that would be a concern, if there was a
That would
lot
be
more
a-
traffic out there, you know, because the roads, to me, are narrower than,
We'd have to pay.
yeah,
Okay.
normal roads, so.
I think, not to be a Debbie Downer, but this whole thing about overlays it's a great idea. I don't know that it's gonna work in Temple, because all the NIMBYs, not in my backyard, nobody wants an overlay district on their road.
Sure.
With a higher density of housing and more traffic.
Right.
So everybody, that doesn't mean that they might not win. The majority of the time might say, hey, sorry, where you live is the perfect spot to do it.
Right.
And we're gonna overrule you, because it's a democracy, but
Well, I think
I
the
just know
town,
there'll be some pushback, because it's new and everybody's gonna be scared, oh.
they would vote on it.
Yeah.
It's not something that we could,
Yeah, right, of course.
And most people really wouldn't understand what they were voting on anyway, so.
well, we have to do a good job of creating. I think it's a question when we do the community feedback.
That we do wanna isolate, cause, nodes of where it could work, so that, this doesn't just create sprawl,
Peterborough Road.
Right,
Mhm.
if it goes to the community at all, but that's.
Right, right.
We've talked about this in Highway Road. Peterborough Road, North Road, Converse Road, Webster, 45, and 101, that's 6.
That's all basically the north side of town.
It's just all.
Well, except 45, yeah.
All the roads over here are antique, they're 14 to 20 feet wide, the Brown Road never should have been built on. And we just can't handle anything on this side, plus it's a mountain zone. But down that way, once you cross 101, it's just wide open up there. With existing class 6 roads.
Okay.
That I don't think would fly. Honestly,
Well, I think some of them are under content. I think.
But it sounds like
Conservation.
101 is probably a reasonable
Yes.
place that we could say.
The only
and
thing
relate
that
this
happened was Town Posey, remember, he suggested, and it was because it was in a mountainous area, but the state said to put a passing lane. And that's what killed that.
Just put what on?
A left-hand turn, if you came down the mountain, they wanted him to put a left.
A breakdown lane.
Lane, so the
Um,
breakdown lane would widen out and you'd have your flow of traffic. I'm surprised Ben didn't have it up to it.
But he was, Mr. Chairman, what was it? He was approved for 37.
It was something big.
37 units?
When they reached the state.
Yeah.
The state said, well, if you're gonna have that many, you have to move more one. And that just killed it.
the state did do a quick traffic study for Ben, and they said that
They were fine with
it's fine.
Yeah.
He's not gonna generate enough new traffic.
it.
Depends on the time of year.
Yeah.
so their other area is down by the elementary school.
But that's on 45, so
That's on 45.
There are 3 new lots down there. When did those get approved?
New Ipswich.
Oh, that's no switch
Yeah.
already? Were those 3 are cut in?
Yeah, so
Okay.
three houses per driveway.
Yeah, the 3 houses, they're common drives,
Okay,
three common drives, 9 houses in there,
9 houses.
but that's no.
Well, George has all this property down 45,
Yeah, it's about 5.
and I don't think he's gonna put it in conservation.
No. And he's got the property on Wilson.
Yeah,
Howard Hill.
101, yeah.
Yeah, so there potentially could be significant property coming up that could be built on.
And we haven't even talked about adders. Right, adders is accessed from Fish or Hadley. It's boom to boom. But that's way down the road.
I think we just pick one and show what it could look like, and then
Yeah,
see what people think.
because it's all spec.
Yeah,
Right.
I think 101 would be the least threatening to most.
Mhm.
I guess my final question in the moment for you two is knowing that changes will be proposed, and this is absolutely putting you on the spot as you don't know what the changes are. But the goal for the changes will be to allow development to be easier and more affordable. So more condensed, it will appear denser, but it won't necessarily be denser if you're looking at the total land area that you know, the lot sizes and that sort of thing. Do you have any knee-jerk reactions where you, like, do you think that this is something you could support knowing what you know right now, or do you have ideas like, well, I wish it was more like this, or absolutely putting you on the spot, but
Right off the top of my head, no, I mean, I don't see any issues with it.
okay.
Obviously, it depends.
Yeah,
Obviously,
it's
but
working
it's no,
out.
right. Right now, I mean, obviously. Once I heard more about it, no, I don't like that, or something like that, but, I mean, I have no problem with. You know, more houses coming to town and, you know, developments or whatever, if that's. What the town agrees to do and. Allows it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and again, this is only
Right, no, absolutely, right.
allowing,
Yeah.
there's no invitation to developers to come and, you know, it's.
Right.
It's just changing what's possible when developers do decide they want to. live.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and keeping in mind, we don't have town water or sewer, so
Right,
Exactly.
it does limit what can
Absolutely.
come.
right, what they can do, what they can't, yeah.
It's just something different than 3 acres, 300 feet of frontage.
Yeah.
Which
That's
is
a
what,
really good way of putting it.
Mhm. How about you, Ken?
Is the acreage changing?
There's a
Oh.
bill.
Oh, yeah, that's what I heard something about it changing.
Yeah,
It'll
I
have
think
to be the,
2 acre.
okay,
2 acres, and 200 feet of
200
frontage.
200 feet
Yeah.
of frontage.
Which is what Wilton has ironically. That's their zoning, but, the consensus is it probably isn't gonna pass.
I haven't checked in the last couple of weeks. I know there were some amendments made to the bill, because I thought it was 50 feet of frontage. I think they changed that.
No, yeah, they changed that.
It was 50, and I think they got pushed back on
Yeah,
that, so
for sure.
we'll have to see in the next few weeks, I think, right? They
We're all
they vote
limbo
on
on
it
that.
pretty soon.
I think so.
Yeah, the only concern I'd have is just how much, a good traffic study to determine how much stress would be put on the town as far as traffic. Figured a couple of cars per unit,
Mhm.
that's the only concern I'd have.
Okay, so I think, do we have language in there now that, I mean, I know on the site plan
I don't think,
it says the traffic study may be required.
no, I don't think it's in, like, we can make sure that it is somewhere. Cause I can't remember how strong the language for that is in the site plan review.
Yeah, I don't think
That's
we
not something
changed
we
very
focused
much
on.
in
Yeah.
the road standards, because when we had you here last year, you said just keep it the way it is, more or less, so I don't think we changed anything. So that, we'll have to look for that.
Yeah, it would be more stress if you had a condensed setup,
Mhm,
you'd have all that traffic in that one spot. That
right,
would have a problem, of course, if it went into a state road.
yeah,
But if it, what's gonna happen is like, you're gonna have Brown Road, they're gonna develop further up in the woods. You're gonna have to find out a traffic study and then say, okay, if you're gonna have this many cars coming down Brown Road, then we're gonna have to do something.
do some road improvements.
And do you feel like you have a threshold for that?
No,
Depends on the road,
it
right?
depends on, yeah, all our roads are different,
Okay, so
yeah.
traffic study per road agent.
Per location.
Mhm.
So, but to be clear, we have road specifications for new town, class 5 town roads.
Yes,
Yeah.
but our specifications are 10 times better than the existing roads that they're gonna attach to.
And paving is part of it.
Yeah.
They have to be paved.
Yeah, so we could be dumping these beautiful roads that the developers made onto fish. Fish road.
In the spring.
Yeah,
It's mud, it's a mud road.
It's, yeah, one of the muddy roads in town.
Oh, yeah.
Hmm.
yeah, so you just have to find out, because you may find in the study that they do enter Fish Road, but they only go this way. Then you could do an improvement. They could either help us do the improvement, we'll do it. Or they do the improvement too. We have to make sure if there's gonna be a stream crossing. If I got more cars going over a 23-foot wide culvert, it would have to be changed to a bridge. You should have all those trucks.
Mhm.
all the deliveries, and all it's a pounding on the culvert and flatten it out.
The other thing we put in, and this was, you probably recall this coming up when we did the Shelley Guys subdivision.
Yes.
The driveway that was presented to us, the driveway plan didn't have any driveways directly across from other people. So, and there was an abutter that was not very happy when the final driveway went in, it was directly across from their driveway.
Yeah, it was, I talked to the developer about it, and he said the language wasn't strong enough, so it gave him a loophole.
Mhm.
You know, really
So we're trying to correct that.
stronger language.
I actually
Plus,
have feedback on that.
Oh, okay.
It's generally against design standards to have driveways offset because of safety. They want
Huh.
drivers to be able to make eye contact before making a left. And where it's offset, that's less likely to.
Perfect
Yeah,
example,
interesting.
25.
Yes, it is, yes.
Yeah,
Double intersection.
interesting.
Mhm.
So
It's upset.
I know I put that in our language for
Yeah.
tonight, but I finally was able to have a conversation with somebody who knows more about it yesterday.
Mhm.
And they.
Oh, okay.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, your 45 Webster Highway analogy,
Yeah.
that's example is spot on.
You know why they get away with it? It's a bridge.
Mm.
That's a giant bridge.
Mhm.
Mm.
That's why they do it.
There may be a different provision saying that driveways need to be offset by X number of feet, you know, but the way it's currently presented does not provide the right protections for safety or really in the interest of not having somebody right across the street, which was, you know, the problem that was encountered previously.
Mm.
So we can work on it more, but
Yeah,
as it stands, it's not.
Okay. Okay. Did you have any other questions for them?
I'm sure I will.
Not available, sorry.
They all know how to get a hold of me.
But I don't for tonight. You guys gave us a lot of stuff to think about. I really appreciate that you came to participate in the conversation tonight.
Do we want to ask George to stay to talk about the all-purpose stuff? Do you?
We could, yeah,
If you're
while you're
up
here, if you can just jump ahead real quick to that, it'd probably take 5 minutes. That would be great. So yeah, that being said, Sarah, if we could just move ahead in
Pause for a
our
moment.
agenda just for 5 minutes, so you could explain the whole sprinkler system, all-purpose storage expansion. Yeah, go before.
What do you wanna know?
So the email came in with the question, and I mean, I guess my question is, are they gonna have to come back to us because we didn't approve a well?
So, yes, so. My only question is, and I tried to answer, I don't think you guys were on all the emails that. Jawal, whatever that guy was that sent.
Okay,
One of the questions he had asked me was about building, B and C. And the only plan that I saw, it looked like that was all gonna be one building.
yeah,
So I'm like, what are you talking about building B and C? Cause I saw that, the three existing that they have, and then one
Right.
big one in the back of that.
right,
So I'm like, if that's what you're doing, that's all one building, that's over the 2,500 square foot, so you need a sprinkler system in the whole building. So if that's the case, then yes, they're gonna need a well or something there cause it has to be an automatic sprinkler. So. When he said that, I'm like, I think what they were thinking is, I saw it on the plan, they have like there's two red lines on there, and it looks like, I think it separates the interior. Units from the exterior units, and I think he was trying to say that's like two different buildings, and it's like, no, the way I'm looking at that, that's one big building. So if that's the case, yes, that whole building has to be sprinkled, has to be an automatic sprinkler, so that they're gonna need some sort of well or pond, something that hooks to that, that constantly has water for them to do that.
okay, I thought it was all external units, I thought there were no internal.
No, there's
units.
internal units.
Am I misremembering? Do you guys remember?
I know we discussed the idea of,
Do you have-
question of sprinklers, and we they satisfied us with their answer. That they wouldn't need them, and I think it was maybe because they were all exterior.
It could
Trying
be,
to
but then he
remember-
also said Will Wilds told him he didn't need it.
Well, that's what happened,
Yeah.
right? Because
Which
we
is,
talked about
true.
sprinklers.
No, and even if they're all external, it goes by the square footage.
Mhm.
Like the ones they have right now are 2,000 square feet each, because I think they're like 100 by 20, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
So as long as it's under 2,500 square feet, they don't need a sprinkler. As soon as they go above 2,500, even if it's all external, buildings, they're still gonna need a sprinkler.
yeah,
I don't know if I have the actual
That's a stupid
plan.
question, but just the nature of the beast of storage unit, aren't they fireproof in between each unit anyways? Or not?
A lot of them, just metal.
They're just metal.
They don't put any, usually they don't put any,
Fireproofing.
fireproofing in.
Because they can go.
Exactly.
Drawing here,
can't tell that can't tell that there's internal unit
Yeah.
based on their rendition.
I had the floor plan, I don't know if you guys saw the.
this is
I know you guys saw that.
soil stuff.
This explains why Pete Caswell called and left me a message saying, hey, I didn't do a well down there. They're gonna need a well. And I thought, well, no, they don't need a well, Pete, they're not doing sprinklers.
Yeah, they told us they didn't.
Who told us they didn't? Well, it does look like,
It's
yeah,
in the-
based on their renditions, it's all exterior.
You can't, we can't really tell, but
No,
it was in the minutes, which I emailed, I think. Back to you, George, and maybe Will as well. That, that Chuck, I think, told us that Will Wild.
This is
told
the
them.
floor plan that I have. No, that's my fault.
Not at all.
well, there's internal units.
In between those two red lines, those are all internal units.
Did he email that to you, or is that?
Well, the yellow on the outer side, those are external units.
Right, these are external,
But
right, so these guys in
the
here,
beige and the green,
yes.
Yep.
The blue, the green.
Those are all
those-
internal.
Those are all internal.
you are correct, they are.
I don't know if I'm supposed to see this, but, Ken sent it to me. But you guys saw it.
We didn't see that detail.
I don't know that we ever got that plan.
Oh, okay. I can forward it to you if you want it.
Hmm,
Oh, I tried back to
somebody's trying to pull a fast one.
I would have thought that.
Mhm.
We would have remembered if there was internal units on that, but
Right, and we definitely talked about sprinklers, and I believe,
Yeah.
like Christina was.
this conversation should be in the minutes.
It is in the minutes. So. Here's the file that's on the website.
What's the address again for all you guys? Planning board.
Temple planning. At templemnh.gov.
Motion package, maybe. Yeah.
I just sent it to you. Like I'm down south. Oh, you sent it to y'all.
Hey, I was born in the south.
Yeah, so they're gonna have to come back and get approval for, right, the well. And then, but they're, did their.
There's a well
their
or a
zoning event-
citron or something there that holds water.
Yeah, and they have.
It has to be an automatic sprinkler.
Yeah.
With
I don't see
that
anything in here
layout
that
that they have.
shows.
Now, the only way they may be able to get
Internal
around it
units.
is they separated the buildings
Mhm.
and made them so that they're under the 2,500 square feet.
What minimum separation would they have to have
Percentage
between the
of all.
buildings?
As long as you can tell they're two.
Well, I don't
distinct
ever
buildings.
remember
Yeah,
seeing
yeah,
that,
as long as
ever.
you can
I
tell.
don't, I'd remember that,
That-
No,
that
this is,
100%
this is the
do
plans
that.
right here.
yeah. Yeah,
Did
we,
their special exception get extended? So maybe
They'll have to go.
They will have to go back.
I
before
don't
the
think they
zoning.
got an extension on the special exception. Well, if they're changing the design, it has to go
That's
back
right, through
anyway.
everything.
no, they were told, that they did not, Deb Harling, the chairperson of the ZBA, and I spoke. And we decided that they didn't need to, they met the requirements. and that they didn't need to get an extension on the special exception. And so we emailed them. But then the sprinkler thing came up
Right,
Oh, okay,
after that,
that's what,
Yeah.
because I saw the email about the extension on the
Right.
special exception.
right? So they're good, as far as I'm concerned, they're good on their special exception, but site plan, this just
Right.
puts a twist in it with the sprinkler, they're gonna have to come back and talk with us about that.
Do they understand now that they have to put a sprinkler system in, or are they
I
still,
went on the email.
okay?
And CC Fieldstone, or is it?
Yeah,
Fieldstone?
it's Joao or Joair,
Yeah.
whoever, it's the guy that sent us an email that, well, I guess he sent it to
But he's not,
Carol and.
that's
sent it
not
to
a
us.
Fieldstone guy, that's the
He works for.
Yeah, that's Patriot Holdings.
Patriot Holding.
Yeah, so you haven't been coming.
He's the only one that's talked to me, I haven't gotten anything.
Oh,
from
okay, so
anybody
he's just representing Patriot Holdings. So Fieldstone needs to know about,
right.
they would be,
else. Yeah,
if they don't know, they're gonna be blindsided
I haven't heard
on
from
this.
anybody, I don't even know who's on from Fieldstone, this,
Okay,
Yeah.
It was Chuck.
I say Joair or whatever,
Yeah.
how you say his name, he's
Yeah.
the only one that has contacted me.
But if they came with a one building design and then wanted to separate it into two buildings as. We're mentioning it, would that be something that they'd have to come back for too?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
It's a change on the plan.
change the plan, so
yeah,
they're coming back.
yeah.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to come back.
Mm.
We may call you again.
No, that's fine, that's not a problem. I don't know if you guys. Reach out to Fieldstone or if you guys have a contact, I mean, I have no problem doing
I
it.
think we have to respond.
I think we'll
Okay, yeah.
we'll reach out. The thing about this is that this company does this all over New England, all over the country,
Yeah,
and they know the laws.
Mhm.
And how could they think that they were gonna be able to do that square footage of a building with internal units and not have a sprinkler system? I don't know, I don't understand how would they do that?
The only
And
thing
how did Fieldstone allow that to happen? Because they do this all
I
the
would,
time too.
the only thing I can think of is there are circumstances where the fire marshal can give them a variance. So they can say, okay, as long as you meet X, Y, and Z, you don't need a sprinkler system. Well, the fire marshal has seen this plan and they're like, they're not getting a variance on this plan if it stays where it is, so they need a sprinkler system.
So the fire marshal has seen.
Yeah, they have seen, it.
Okay.
Yes, and that's what I wanted to verify with them, because I knew they could do a variance. And so I talked to them, they're like, yeah, no, not the way this is set up,
Okay,
so.
well, this has got interesting.
mhm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
Yeah.
thanks, George.
It was really
Yeah.
helpful.
I'm sure we'll be talking about this
Yeah.
again.
I didn't even know about it and I just got the email, like I said, from Carol, so.
Yeah. Yeah. How did we catch this? Is this?
They emailed us.
Yeah, that Patriot guy
Right.
emailed Carol
Mhm.
and said, Mr. Wild said, we don't need this. Whoever we'll talk to from Patriot left. So this guy started taking over, so he's like, I just wanna make sure, we don't need a sprinkler system, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And Carol sent it to, I don't know if Christine was on there, or I got it anyways, and Carol's like, can you answer him? Okay, what do we got? And I was like, well, I haven't seen no plans, what's going on? So that's when I talked to Ken, and Ken sent me what I just sent you guys. So I looked at it, I'm like, yeah, no. Went through the NFPA one and everything, I'm like, no, this needs a sprinkler system.
I saw your lengthy email,
Yeah.
including the explanation.
Yeah.
Right, well, that's why I
Yeah, he
tried
asked
to do
you
it.
to send it
So,
to
hey,
us.
this is
Send
the
it all
NFPA
plan
got it
board.
from blah, 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 blah,
Yeah.
just so everybody knows.
Yeah.
So they can look up if they wanna see it, it's
Sure.
right there in black and white, so, then, like I said, I did talk to the fire marshal, they said, "Hey, I know you gotta do a variance, and so I looked, yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
well, we're gonna be talking again about that.
thank you very much.
Thanks, George.
Yeah.
All right, good. Well, and thank you,
Cool,
Thank you.
have a
Ken.
good night, everybody.
Yep,
Night.
yeah. All right, so back to Sarah and,
Thank you, Sarah. Sorry about
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, it's just kind of an important thing, as you can tell. Yeah. Not that you're not important, but it's just I don't wanna make them wait till 8:30.
So I'm just gonna kind of run through the memo, I guess, starting with the yield plan requirement.
Oh, thank you.
So this is something that Todd actually brought to my attention. He was like, why are we excluding undevelopable land from the yield plan to determine, how many units can be built? And my response was just kind of like, because that's how it's typically done in conservation subdivisions and, cluster developments and that sort of thing. But he raised the point of, you know, if it were a traditional subdivision, you guys are not excluding undevelopable land from the yield count for that. So you can have a 3-acre lot and only a quarter of an acre is developable to build a single family home in town right now, at least from what I've been able to determine reviewing the regulations, and I absolutely could have missed something. So if I'm on the wrong track here, please call me out. But with that in mind, it seems like it would make sense to ditch the undevelopable land portion within the PRD so that this would be just as lucrative and really going a step further, more lucrative to develop PRD than a traditional subdivision in the interest of reducing sprawl within the community.
I understand that, but I also, as you can realize, I'm not in favor of as much housing as we can build. Maybe if that's workforce only housing and that's the case, but otherwise, I don't think building as much as we can build is good for Temple.
Isn't the idea though to protect like wildlife corridors and, you know, having more land in contiguous open space versus breaking it up or having it be private lots?
Either way, well, within the PRD, whether you exclude undevelopable land from the yield count or not, you still have language to encourage, protection of natural features, wildlife corridors, ... You know, right now with the conventional subdivision, you definitely don't have that. I mean, that's really just based on the interests of the people in the neighborhood, whether they want to cut down all of their trees or not. I mean, I think generally it appears that's not happening in Temple. People build a house here and they typically keep their lot fairly natural, which is fantastic, but they don't have to. So with this, it would just be a way of allowing the exact same density plus your potential bonuses. So right now, potentially 25% higher density with certain circumstances within a PRD than a conventional subdivision. And it could be changed to, as Carter suggested, only apply to workforce housing, because this provision already lives within your workforce housing ordinance. The yield plan there does not exclude undevelopable land. And so this could kind of be shifted into that ordinance or, you know, a cross-reference so that it's not for all housing. It's only for affordable housing.
Well, to your point about buildable, you know, that maybe a quarter acre land, that is true. In a conventional building lot. We just witnessed it over on Colburn Road next to Alan Pickman lot.
Yep.
Really the only place you could build on that lot. But it's legal.
Yep.
And it can be done. It's all about the septic system and it's all about the setbacks from wetland buffers and it can be done, but I understand what Carter's saying too, though. I guess I'm with Carter to. We
Just do it in workforce
kept it
housing.
just for workforce housing. I think. Yeah. I'm glad I could hear more, but
Well, I guess
my
I'd like
gut,
to
my
see
gut would
like
be like,
it mapped out.
yeah.
What it
Yeah,
looks
maybe
like.
that's hard. It's just hard to visualize,
is,
right? We're
yeah.
just saying, oh, we're subtracting or we're taking land away from the conservation or the open space, right? And allowing another house to be built in it. And I don't know. I'm also having a hard time, like a PRD to me, like I understand where we're going, but all the proposed changes are very dramatic. And really could change the landscape of our town. So we need to be mindful and talk through those. And come to a reasonable, something that we propose to the community, because there's just a lot in here that we're proposing to change.
Absolutely, which is why I was having a conversation here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess the whole, originally when we adopted the PRD was, it was all about open space. It was a trade-off.
Right, but in here, we're adding all these bonuses to build more, right? Like, so then the open space is reduced, right?
Well, they still can't build on the undevelopable land, even though it's not counted. And it's undevelopable for a reason,
Right,
mostly because it's wetlands or some ledge or something like that.
But that typically is deducted from the open space formula too. You just,
Yeah.
you can't all have, you can't have lead, cliffs and
Mhm.
and
wetlands
that's.
be
the-
your open space.
that's the
Yeah,
open
you have to
space.
give up some good land too.
Right.
And so,
So we're saying not to give that good land, like, that we wouldn't do that, so. I don't.
It's just-
Trying to-
it's what our zoning is now. Our zoning is now, there's a percentage, I don't.
right, there's a percentage
Of-
that you,
You know, you have to, you can't have, you can't give up all steep slopes and wetlands
right,
to be open space. You can't have that become. So,
and I think are we okay with that or not, or should we make this change, I guess is.
I'd like to see what it looks like, cause I guess in my mind, I was thinking that it would be to protect more natural space, to have the houses clustered together,
Mhm.
so that there's more land that's not developed. So I guess I wanna see what that would look like.
like the thing I printed out there,
Yeah,
To me, that's
don't know if
not,
that's ideal, but
I
I don't-
don't get that impression. To me, it sounds like, well, we're going to allow more houses to be built and less open space.
well, you're talking about the yield plan.
Yeah, this is just about the yield plan. So right now, I'll say you have a 12-acre parcel.
Mhm.
And if you want to do a traditional subdivision and you have the frontage that you need, or you're building a private road, you can have 4 houses
Mhm.
on that traditional subdivision. Within a PRD, if the land is perfect, you can have 4 houses, the way it's currently written. And then there is the potential 25% density bonus for workhouse. Actually, is it even 25%? It's for every 2 units, you can have, every 2 units of workforce, you can have 1 additional housing unit within a PRD. So we might be looking at, what is that, 6 units on your 12 acres? And so, but again, that's only if the land is perfect. So if you have,
Mhm.
let's say 6 of your 12 acres are wetland, in a traditional subdivision, you still can have your 4 houses, even though half the land is garbage.
Mhm.
But in a PRD, you could only have 2 units on that,
Mhm.
maximum 3.
Hmm.
The way it's currently written.
Right,
So it's really just a way to encourage a developer to choose the PRD as the path towards development, rather than a traditional subdivision with the interest of, at least half of that land being put into perpetual conservation.
Mhm.
But if I was a developer and I had 12 acres, I could go conventional, get 4. But if I want PRD to get 2 or 3, I'm going conventional,
Bingo.
Mhm.
I'm going
Mhm.
conventional.
there's no incentive.
That's
Right,
why
right.
we're recommending not excluding undevelopable land from the yield plan.
Okay.
okay, so that explained, that makes more sense, okay, I'm with you, I get it. I
I'm
just-
sorry.
I,
And then, the other piece of this would be the density bonuses,
Mhm.
which there's plenty of space for us to change that in any way, shape, or form that makes sense. I
Right.
wouldn't roll back on the workforce housing density bonus, because that is actually the same as what you currently have. If anything, the workforce housing density bonus, I would increase a little bit so that you're making it easier to build affordable housing. I wouldn't necessarily increase all of the other bonuses because, as Carter said, you don't want to just develop to develop.
Right.
This isn't a mission to build Temple. The
No.
goal is to create affordable housing within Temple and within reason.
Yeah.
So with that, what would you guys like to do with the yield plan? And really, the undevelopable land portion of the yield plan.
Point me to where I should be looking at in the PRD ordinance.
It is in the PRD ordinance.
The maximum allowable density in any plan, so I'm looking at page, well, I don't know if my page number is correct, page 2 on mine, but it's B4.
Okay,
Maximum allowable density, ERD, shall be calculated using a formal yield plan. May be increased up to 25% through specific density bonuses as follows. So can you explain that for us, Sarah, the dense, says as follows, so A, the base density calculation, B, the density bonuses. And is that it?
I want to make sure we're all looking at the same pages. Which, are we looking at the actual ordinance, the red line ordinance?
I'm looking at the red line.
I'm looking at
I'm looking at proposed 6/3/25. Here's a red line. That's the same thing.
Yeah, one is red line, the other is not.
Okay, so, yeah, B for. Is it B? Yes. And so the way it's currently written, you guys have undevelopable area. Sort of defined within the body of the ordinance, even though it's not like in your definitions, but it says excluding wetlands. Steep slopes, it's sort of broadly defined as it's currently written. So when we were talking about this before, I recommended you guys actually define that so that there was no room for misinterpretation of what that meant. And so within the red line version, it's recommending that a definition just be added to your glossary for the whole zoning ordinance, which also could have different implications if you add that, because then it would be applicable to your whole ordinance. Undevelopable area, or undevelopable, which is another conversation.
Yeah, where else is that in there?
It's not. Well, you talked about it in the mountain conservation district.
I was just gonna say, it's probably there. Is it anywhere like with the telecommunications, any of that's funky stuff too? I don't know.
I think it's different in the telecommunications ordinance, because I feel like there might be a reference to 15% slope
Mm,
in that ordinance. So this is sort of presenting two options. One, maintaining a yield plan that excludes undevelopable area. Or two, maintain a yield plan that is in line with what's currently required in workforce housing ordinance.
it seems pretty vague in the workforce housing ordinance.
Okay, so Sarah, is the question that you're asking us if we should take away that undevelopable land? I mean, I think after you have explained that, that makes sense to me, so I don't have a problem with that. It just initially, like, it's a hard concept, I think, to wrap your head around, so,
Yeah, I get
Um,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm trying to look at the old. You know, our current. And then, yeah, seeing what you're taking, you're taking all this out.
I think it's a good topic for the planners group that meets through SWRPC to look at yield plans and. I know I've sat in on the meetings in New Ipswich for that subdivision over there and. Got a good look at how complicated it is to figure out,
Sure.
And that's density,
yeah,
that project is, that's a dense,
it's a cluster development.
that's a cluster development, they're right on top of each other.
Yep.
Which, you know, if you're saving 100 acres of land behind it, I guess then there's some pros and cons to that, and that's the whole idea, I guess, right?
Right,
So they have their little community and their wildlife corridor is still there and
right.
there's land preserved forever. And so
And
there's,
the abutters
it's
protected.
not all bad, you mean, it looks probably crazy to some people to see 30 houses, but
That's my house next door to me.
yeah, well, people coming from the urban areas, they don't, that's country to them. You know, they're not like Casper, we need 10 acres of land around us, you know,
Well, and
they're,
there's the younger generation, I think, you know, my kids are that age, yours are a little bit
they don't
older.
mind having a neighbor right there.
They
Yeah,
don't,
they
they
don't.
want the community. They don't wanna be house poor. They wanna live with the money that they make, not put it into a house.
Well,
Um,
so where are we?
we gonna go
Yeah.
through all these things, or how are we?
I just wanna knock the yield plan.
Okay.
Into one side of the table or the other.
Okay.
Before we move on,
Yep,
because it will determine how it gets revised. You
Okay.
know, whether we
Okay.
try to make more clarity the way it's written in the workforce housing ordinance.
Okay.
Or more clarity the way it's being proposed.
Mhm.
We can keep an exclusion. And you keep, the land within that. Do you want it to live in the ordinance or do you want it to live in the glossary? So the only decision you have to make tonight, well, you don't even have to make it, but what I would like for you to make tonight is whether or not the yield plan. Will exclude unbuildable land.
I have no problem with dropping that phrase.
yep. Again, I'd like to see what it looks like on a plot of land, but, yeah. I
Yeah,
agree,
like she's explained.
Yeah.
It's the same as we have for subdivisions.
right.
By dropping that, so.
Mhm. Yep,
Well, that is a good point.
Mhm.
All right, well, for now, is everybody we agreed to do that?
Yeah,
I think so.
Mhm.
Okay, now we'll just run through this table, and I know that I gave a little bit of. Language to section D before we get to the table, but that might take a while, so I'd rather get through the table before we talk about. The new section D, which
Okay,
doesn't have to be part of PRD, it can be part of workforce housing, but anyway. So,
Where's this table?
Yeah,
in her memo,
oh, I have it here somewhere.
Doesn't define.
okay, so section A1
I have it somewhere.
of the proposed ordinance. It expands the
Oh, where?
goal to wildlife corridors and habitat connectivity. So now it reads, promote the conservation of the natural environment and the development of land in harmony with natural features of the specific site proposed for development. This part's the new language, including the protection of wildlife corridors and habitat connectivity to maintain ecological functions across the landscape.
yeah, that makes
Yep.
sense.
Okay, and then A6 just has a little bit added on to the end. So it reads, promote a wide range of housing opportunities for individuals and families of various ages and economic circumstances. New part, including housing that meets the needs of the local workforce.
Mhm.
And then The next four are new goals. Number 9, encourage development patterns and building practices that support climate resilience and reduce vulnerability to environmental stressors, including extreme weather and heat.
What does that mean?
Well, in this case, it could mean, encouraging development that keeps mature trees, reduces asphalt, reduces impervious surfaces generally.
It's the low impact development stuff that we have. Stormwater runoff.
Mhm.
I mean, I think all of these, like this whole section is just meant to give context, right?
Yep.
To our PRD. And
It does
it
give
doesn't,
context.
it's not really like you have to do something. But
Right, it's not like you have to do something, but where this section really comes into play is when people are asking for variances. Because it's about the intent.
Okay,
And so that's something to keep in mind with this section. So if there's anything in here that you feel goes against the intent
okay,
of the PRD, then we should strike it.
okay.
Do you want me to keep reading through them or,
I was just reading them while we were
Yeah.
talking.
Yeah.
okay,
I mean, I think it aligns with what we're trying to do.
Mhm.
Mhm.
what about number 11? Are you guys comfortable with the number 1? Foster diversity of housing types, including smaller units, multifamily dwellings, and cottage-style housing within a unified development framework to help meet the varied housing needs of the community.
Well, I mean, the actual workforce housing in a PRD could be multifamily. It's the only place, it's the only way we allow it in this town.
Mhm.
We haven't had it yet, but,
Well, you have just changed
We
it.
need the
We just
conversion.
changed that.
oh, we did, that's right. Oh, yeah, we did, that's right. Yeah. So cottage style housing, I know that we looked at that, right? Carter, you guys looked at,
Yeah,
but it wasn't, was that a big hit? That wasn't a big hit with the town, was it?
Maybe 4th on the list.
yeah, I think everybody likes images of very cute cottages and.
Yeah.
I think they liked that more than they liked like apartment
Yeah,
building.
yeah.
So I guess the answer is that this is fine.
Yes, I'm fine with it.
Okay, then, moving on to section B1. There's now an A, and a 1 and a 2. So, under standards and criteria, planned residential development shall be a permitted use in the rural residential and agricultural district of the town of Temple. A, notwithstanding the base zoning district's limitations to single-family dwellings, multifamily structures shall be permitted within a planned residential development, subject to the following limits. 1, up to 6 dwelling units per structure shall be permitted, provided the structure includes only units that meet the definition of workforce housing, or as part of a planned residential development in which workforce housing units are proportionally included in accordance with Article 4, Section 26, and RSA 684. 2, up to 3 dwelling units per structure shall be permitted for any development regardless of affordability status, provided that each unit contain more than 1,200
No more.
no more than 1,200 square feet of gross floor area. So this is part that I feel like might be uncomfortable, so I want to make sure we discuss this. So,
Is this like the state requirement or what?
no, number 2
Number,
is not.
I'm sorry, it's number 1.
Number 1, yes, follows what's allowed within the RSA for workforce housing. And it's only applicable to workforce housing. Number 2 could be applicable to any housing, provided that it is smaller unit sizes.
So this is the up to 3 dwelling units that we're referring to?
And the reason this is in here is because smaller unit sizes and shared walls naturally make more affordable units, so they may not actually fit the definition of affordable housing, but there's workforce and then there's housing that's not $1 million. And so having this provision could allow for the development of housing that is more attainable
So this is a triplex, a
Yep.
3 unit, it'd be basically a triplex.
Yep,
In a town that,
it now allows 3-family conversion of existing.
yeah, but we still don't allow duplexes. Yeah, I know. Well, maybe we're warming
Which is
up.
why-
Maybe we're.
Bring your attention to this. Is
Yeah.
this something that
Yeah.
you're comfortable with exploring, bringing to the town? Or is this something that we should back off and make it duplexes rather than triplexes, or scratch it all together?
I just. When you say triplex to people, they're gonna flip out. They're
We
gonna
won't
think,
say triplex, we'll say 3 units.
Yeah, 3 units sounds a little better than triplex, but I call it what it is. It's a, but they're small, but they are small. This isn't
Okay.
big 3-bedroom condos up in Peterborough. This is different. Right?
I feel like, having this separate from the form-based code compliance criteria. I mean, that would apply in this instance, right, to the 3-unit, and that's on the,
Not necessarily.
okay,
It could if we reorganize things. So the form-based code section is meant to be applicable to a development that is ignoring your density standards and just using soil-based density.
hmm,
So, you know, your 12-acre lot, if it had perfect conditions, half of it still has to go in conservation, so you can only build on 6 acres, but if those 6 acres were, you know, perfectly flat and pure sand, I think you can get as small as 30,000 square feet per unit. And that's where the form-based code would come in. If you wound up having, you know, 3 6-unit buildings essentially on a 9-acre parcel.
okay, so it's only for the higher density. It's like if they get a special exception,
Right. The way it's currently laid out.
yeah. Cause there's a lot of provisions in here that might make the 3-unit more appealing because they're all about the appearance.
Well, so 1,200 square feet would be a 24 by 24 2-story. 24 by 24 is not much bigger
That's right.
than this room. This room's probably 20 by 20. So just picture 4 feet bigger in both directions and then 2 stories. That would be 1 unit. And so you're taking 3 of those.
Tiny.
So that's really not that big.
No, but we're talking about then, this is within a PRD, so like, how many of those are you building? Like, you're building 6 of those 3-unit buildings or some potentially, like, it's not like it's a one thing on one lot, we're talking about within a PRD.
If you were doing 6, you would have to have a lot of land. I mean, you'd need, I cannot do math in my head, but like 50 acres, because this is not workforce.
Oh, yeah, okay, so maybe walk me through that, so you would need, if it's 3 units in one,
How many acres of land would you
how
need
many acres?
to do that? Yeah,
would you
this 1,200 square foot.
You
Yes,
would need
each-
9,
Each
okay,
unit, each
Got it.
sub-unit counts as a.
Okay, so
counts as a unit, okay,
Currently-
I was thinking, I'm like, oh man, like, that's,
Right.
like, does that count as one
Each
unit?
unit is a dwelling.
Okay.
So when you put it that way,
Okay.
right now you
Then-
could potentially have 9 acres of land in Temple
Yeah,
with 900 feet of frontage, and you could build 3 houses.
Mhm.
This is saying you can build 3 units all together, you need 9 acres of land. So you're preserving, you have by just like,
okay, that, yes, and again.
you're still getting 3 families. You're still getting 3 families on that 9 acres, but you're getting them on one end of that land and the rest of the land is staying open. So I,
That's actually a better thing.
if you think of it that way, it doesn't
Yeah.
sound bad.
Right.
Yeah.
But going
Okay.
back to, the point that we do not currently allow duplexes, like, we're going to then allow this to be, like, I don't know, seems a little. We don't allow duplexes to be built, so we're going to go and say you can build a triplex.
We did it,
Within a PRD?
we did, what we passed this last spring was amazing, that we, and it wasn't.
Some perspectives.
Well, yes, well, I know you have what you feel about that, but I was surprised at Temple, there was no pushback.
Well, like
It
I
was
said,
pretty overwhelming.
problem is-
Everything passed pretty overwhelmingly. So maybe the town is warming up to the idea that, you know,
Well,
I'm not, I don't see the word duplex because it just has this, but I mean, we did.
Requirements of how it has to be listed on the warrant mean that unless you had independent research about it, you really don't know what.
You have
it-
no
what to
idea.
do, Right?
No.
So I think people just like.
People just go, yes, 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 down the line.
I mean, an attached ADU on a large house could be considered a duplex. It's just not the same square footage.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's.
Yep.
I don't know.
Okay,
well, and this says up to 3, so you could do 2.
Mhm.
To Matt's point. So if a developer came in and bought 9 acres of land. But if it only had, okay, so if it only had 300 feet of frontage, you can only build one house.
Right.
Now you could build a
You
triplex
do a triplex.
Right.
based on this criteria. Yeah, so
But a triplex,
it's,
no, that's not a condo.
Can be.
It can be a condo.
well, I would think there would be a common driveway to get to that for those 3
Right.
families. So there would have to be an HOA.
And there's probably common services because it's all in one
The
building.
developer, it would have to be a condo for a developer, because
Yeah.
if you build a triplex and it can't be a condo, then you're looking for a specific buyer that might need a unit for me, a unit for my mom, a unit for.
Oh, you're saying
Okay, so
rather than rentals,
Correct.
rather than rentals. So we
Correct.
didn't, what were your thoughts on that, sir? What direction were you thinking this was gonna go?
I was thinking it would either be condoed or it would be the situation that you're talking, because right now, since you allow an ADU and a DADU on the same property as the primary residence, it's not necessarily different than this, it's just more condensed.
Right,
Yeah.
it's one
Yeah, that's
building.
true.
as
But we
opposed to-
allow one owner of those.
That's the key.
Right.
Yes, yes,
At time of.
At time of, exactly.
no, but like, people have a concern about the detached ADUs. Well, could they sell it after? You can if it's on that piece of property, it's
Only if
just
it's a
detached,
subdivided lot.
unless you had enough land to subdivide it, then you could.
And road frontage.
And you'd have to have the frontage, right? So I guess. My concern with this is, that are we talking about condos, per se, like the 3 owned units? Cause I don't know how that would fly.
Would it be received differently in town if it was condos, owner occupied, or apartments?
The word condos is what's gonna set people off.
Yeah, you can't use that word either. It's like duplexes.
People
yeah.
were really
Yeah.
strongly in favor of owner occupied when we had
They were,
conversations,
they were.
and you,
So from a developer's standpoint, it's a needle in a haystack looking for your buyer.
mhm,
Right, so
right,
the phrasing is it's owner occupied, each unit has an owner.
well,
Yeah.
no, only one unit has to be
Well,
owner
not
occupied, yeah,
Currently,
But
currently.
to
yeah.
sell this new concept, oh yeah, it's still owner occupied, each person owns their own little bit, and maybe that
Mm.
sounds better than condo.
Mhm.
Even though
That's
it's
all
the same
condos
thing.
are, is you
That's
own your
right.
bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
right, that's right.
Exactly the same thing, it just sounds
And
better.
this would just be in a PRD, this isn't in our,
This is just in the PRD,
just in the PRD.
and we can throw it out. But
Mhm.
Well, I mean, you have the note here, get community input, I mean. Unless we feel like people are gonna come after us with pitchforks, I think it's a question.
Well, it's gonna be affordable, that's square footage, Matt, right? You're in real estate,
It will, well, depends on what they put inside it.
Yeah, well, yeah, how nice, yeah, right, true, but the potential to be affordable.
would you change the square footage limits?
The 1,200. I might go a tad bit bigger.
What size do you think would be more appropriate?
I wanna say, my gut tells me 1,500, but that might be too big.
I was thinking 1,600, yeah.
I think 1,200 is sufficient.
1,200, like, we have our rental cottage at our house, and I think it's only like 1,000 square feet, and it has 2 bedrooms, a nice downstairs, like, it's perfect for a couple or single person, like,
Well, yeah, there
I don't
could
know.
be buyers for something that small.
Well, we're
and it's.
trying to be affordable, so I
Yeah.
suppose it's.
I think 1,200 is fine.
It probably is,
1,200 is
1,200
fine.
for, yeah, maybe, might be fine.
Okay. So
Have to look at some floor designs. You need to
Yeah.
go online, look at some floor designs now. 1,200 square foot, 2 bedroom,
Yeah.
units, and then maybe you might change your mind.
For now, we'll keep the provisions in section A as written and bring them for community feedback.
I think so. Is the RSA for workforce housing, is it 5 dwelling units or 6?
Oh, it's 5.
I think that's, yeah,
That's a,
Should we change that?
yeah, I would.
So the
5
question
for
here, though.
5,
is
yeah.
Your ordinance, you allow 6 in the workforce housing section. So 6 is allowed based on the rest of your ordinance.
We're still on
And the
A.
only place where you
Yeah.
can build it is in PRD.
Right,
So maybe if that shouldn't be 6, it should be adjusted in the workforce housing
Yeah.
section as well,
right.
which is fine. I mean, you guys don't have to surpass the law, you know, you can just be in line with it.
We should be in line.
Okay. That's easy. Okay, and then moving down to B3. Any tract proposed for a planned residential development shall have a minimum of 300 contiguous feet of frontage on a class 5 or better road. New provision, A, backlot development of existing lots of record as of town meeting, with a minimum of 50 feet of frontage on a class 5 or better road may be permitted by special exception, provided that safe access can be demonstrated and all other applicable requirements of the zoning ordinance are met.
I severely dislike this one. I
And-
really don't think that I understand it's only in the PRD that we'd be doing this, but I think we have the road frontage for a reason. And I'm not sure we should be sacrificing that for this.
Is there a bill now that talks about backlot development?
Yeah, it may be something that is required, but it hasn't passed yet, and, that probably will be determined before this goes to the town
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
for feedback.
I mean, we had an inquiry this, your neighbor,
Yeah,
that was 11 acre back lot.
Yeah.
And they frontages on the White Ledges Road, which is class 6.
Yeah.
And so they're gonna have to go to the ZBA, and I don't know that the precedent's been set to give them an exception, but I feel for them, but it's a back lot, and it doesn't have frontage on a class 5 road.
It has seemed to me for years that this backlot issue needs to get solved. It's really kind of stupid in many ways. You know, people can have a huge amount of property and they can't use it.
Correct. So
Yeah, that's one situation, or they might not have a huge amount of property and they go build a bunch of houses back there. I don't know.
That's, you know, we'd have to deal with that. I mean, we looked at a couple of lots a few years ago that had 300 feet of frontage
Right.
and it went back 2,000 feet.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
those are
Going to
really
White Ledges Road.
silly lots,
Yeah,
so.
I've seen some backlot provisions in other towns where, the acreage is increased.
Correct.
You know,
double the acreage. Yeah, so if you had double the acreage for what would be a standard lot, you have 50 feet as a back.
Why?
yeah.
Okay, that would make sense.
It's gonna need your paper to fly.
okay.
I think we just see what happens at the state level, but,
okay,
I would not necessarily be in favor of this one either.
I am in favor. Put it up here.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we'll leave it in there for now and
Yeah,
vote on it
I'm-
at a later date.
I could see both sides. I'm
Yeah,
ride the fence on this one for right now.
yeah.
is this something, you know, regardless of what the state does, is there anything that we could do to change this that would make you more comfortable with it? Such as increasing the minimum lot size or width, depth, setbacks, you know, any of those.
I think it's more of a road thing, and if Kent was here, he'd probably allude to that. So we're talking about PRDs on a back lot that doesn't have the proper frontage, which means they're probably on a class 6 road. So Kent's problem would be what's going on Brown Road up there. And it's the road would have to be upgraded.
Right, so that's part of the PRD approval, they'd have to upgrade the road.
Yep, so if they upgrade the road, then,
Where's Jim's here tonight, because this is his situation, exactly.
oh, Jim Maderas, yeah, he has,
His
a right,
situation
Jim's.
exact, where
yeah.
He's got 50 feet of frontage and
Yeah.
60 acres.
Tons of land, right? Yeah, it's too
Mhm.
bad it couldn't be some sort of a compromise. I mean, that, and I think the compromise is you have to upgrade that class 5 road.
Well, he's on class 5, right? Oh, no, he's on class 5. He's on class 5.
I mean, I guess. I'm not even sure, see, I just dislike the Hammerhead lot, like where, where you have houses behind houses, like, I just don't think that that's an attractive aesthetic that the town of Temple should go for, so that.
But a lot of these backlot developments, you wouldn't be able to see them.
Right.
Because the whole problem is, there's not enough road frontage, so they're gonna be way back, unless it's off a slope or something.
That's a positive. It's true.
Maybe
That part is,
some situations, and every situation is different, so it's hard to say, like Jim's situation, yeah, like he has 60 acres, like that's.
But he bought it knowing that.
But he bought it knowing
Mhm.
that, so I get it, but it's hard to say. And to me, if this becomes the precedence, then we become more likely to change the rest of our ordinance in the future, and then the town shifts and we start making all crazy lots everywhere, which.
And I guess the other question is, how many lots fit this criteria in this town?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's probably not many.
Sure.
It's probably not.
And then it's like, can you create this backlot? Like, is
I've-
our neighbor has
Over
like.
the years, I've looked through the tax maps online and there's probably a dozen.
Mm.
And up in the mountain district, there's a handful of big tracts of land
Can't do this in the mountains.
that are, yes, right, exactly.
Right.
Yep, but there are some big tracts that are landlocked.
Yeah.
But that's, I guess, it's good for the conservation, right?
Right, well, that's my issue with it, is it seems contradictory to what we have in our purpose. Like what the point of the PRD is, just a vulnerability to environmental stressors, low impact development. It's a fine line, right? I mean, it's
You're trying to balance. two
it's
things.
trying to balance
Factory.
and, right. And to me, it makes more sense where there's already roads versus putting in new roads. That's where I land on it.
Okay, we'll revisit once the state makes their determination.
Okay,
Mhm.
we can cover
The
4 already, the yield plan.
Yeah, I feel like we've already covered that fully. B4B, looking at density bonuses. So, when we last discussed this, we talked about potentially increasing just for argument's sake, exceeding 25% density bonuses, at least in the case of workforce housing. I did not put different language in here. I just kind of highlighted it in my own copy so that we could discuss that. Do you guys want to look at exclusive to workforce housing, increasing the density bonus beyond 25%?
Well, I guess I would say this isn't. My dad would hate me right now because Temple's Temple, we don't follow other people, but what do other towns like our demographic, our size, our population, what do you find that they do?
I don't know that I've seen it much beyond 30%, maybe as high as 40%, but there are a lot of, no town is really just like any other town. And, with Temple, yes, you have the constraints of water and sewer, and that's something that is very common in a lot of communities in New Hampshire, but you guys also have your mountain.
Yeah, we have
You know,
steep slopes.
Your
Yeah,
topography
yeah.
is very different
Mhm.
than many other communities,
Mhm.
and, with that in mind, it's difficult to just throw a blanket statement out there. But something that will always be a part of this is what the soils can handle, what the capacity of the ground is. So even, with a 25% increase, you're still getting nowhere near the density that, bad soils and steep slopes are going to allow, you know, I mean, that's where the 2 acre lot minimum comes from, is you can pretty much accommodate a septic system for a single family residence with 3 bedrooms on a 2 acre lot. And so with the 25% increase, we're still falling within that 2 acre. I'm just gonna call it minimum, because, you know, we're not talking about developing 2 acres for each of these units, but you need the lot capacity, you know, for lot loading and such. So this is where, again, I mean, you could keep it here, and then if we wind up keeping the provision for soil-based density with the form-based code, then you are allowing increased density for workforce housing in that part of the ordinance. Which means maybe you don't need to also allow it here, but I think it bears consideration because the other part may get dropped completely. And if it does, do you guys want to allow higher density for affordable housing?
So maybe this is a dumb question, but why do we have 2 sections for workforce housing regulations?
Because you already have 2 sections and regulations.
You should keep them.
So I mean, I feel like is that typical? Seems like it would be
Yes. I'm
tricky
confused.
for a
Right.
developer
What are you doing? Right.
to follow,
So you don't actually have to have a workforce housing ordinance
right?
at all, and a lot of communities will have a workforce housing ordinance. Rural communities have the workforce housing ordinance that's very similar to what you guys have.
Right.
It spells out everything that the law says. It defines their density. Many of them just stick with the 5 units per structure. And then they say, and this is where you can build it. And you guys have done the same thing, except for where you said where you can build it is only in a PRD, which means you have to have at least 6 acres to develop any workforce housing in Temple,
Mhm.
which instantly creates a cost barrier.
Right.
So, workforce housing does not need to be within the PRD. However, if it is in the PRD, it allows you to create something that is affordable while also conserving land and preserving your
Mhm.
environment and all of those other factors. So it makes sense for it to be in the PRD, you know, other towns have it in their conservation subdivision, other cluster development regulations, or things that are very similar to a PRD. And they don't necessarily have it as a standalone item of, you know, you can build it anywhere in town that allows residential development, which would be your whole town.
I remember Alan Pickman, probably a good one to ask, or maybe Randy Martin were on the board, but. Or George Willard, we had PRDs, before workforce housing came into, the state mandated that we had to adopt workforce housing.
Mhm.
And so I can't remember why we picked PRDs but I think it was probably, we thought, to protect the town.
Mhm.
Cause there was a fear that workforce housing, oh, no, there's gonna be buildings everywhere, and it's gonna be, you know, this doom and gloom, so overdevelopment, so. I think that was a way to regulate it. By putting it in there, it made it tough, and it did, cause.
It made it
'cause we-
accessible.
It did, but we met the state's requirement of having workforce housing, so that's kind of what happened. And now look at us, we should it even be in there? Or should it be, it's like you said, what other ways could there be to?
So you would instead just have the workforce housing and then have an overlay district to say where that could be built, or you would
Well-
just say it could be built anywhere
You could say it could be built anywhere in the,
in a district.
Rural
or-
residential.
yeah, within a district.
Mhm.
And, you know, list your parameters, list your guidelines, and leave it at that.
Right.
And if you did that, if you took it out of the PRD. Sorry, I was about to say something, and I'm thinking, is that a good idea?
Yeah, that's what
I
I'm
was
like.
just thinking about.
Yeah, I don't know either, I don't.
But then you
just the
lose the
confusing
benefit
way
of the
now.
PRD, which is to conserve land, so. I
Right,
don't know.
right.
So what I've proposed for you guys tonight is changing the way it works in a PRD so that
Yeah.
it actually could be affordable.
Sure.
And also considering an overlay district to allow workforce housing outside of the PRD.
Hmm.
But where that overlay district
Okay.
is, I don't know. Because I had a conversation with your health officer on Friday afternoon that made me feel less clear about where that should go.
Peter,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm sure it was a short conversation.
Yeah, well, all, not, so not,
Likely.
so not all PRDs are workforce housing.
Correct.
But all workforce housing has to be in a PRD.
Right.
That's the way it is now.
Yeah.
That's right.
And, you know, I mean, many communities allow their workforce housing overlay to be near their town center, near town services. And I realize that having the workforce housing in your village area is something that doesn't score very high.
Well, there's nowhere to put it.
There's no land anyway, but yeah, that's right.
Not only- But it doesn't really make sense,
Yeah.
like, we don't have a lot.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
There's
there
not a lot of
bunch
amenities.
services. Yeah, it's true, and so that's why I was thinking, based on other conversations we've had, having it somewhere along the 101 or the 45 corridor could make more sense. But you also don't want to create sprawl, which is why we want to consider
Mhm.
nodal developments, so you can say like, this area of 101 and this area of 45 is where it makes sense in our community for this to exist. Those areas may not exist. I don't know the nuances of 101 and 45 the way you guys do, the way other members of your community do, so I don't want to tell you where that is. You know, I can look at soil maps and like where the bedrock is and say, you probably shouldn't do it over here because you can't put a septic in and it's gonna be impossible to drill a well. But beyond that, I don't feel comfortable making those recommendations for your community.
I think also generally from like, if we're talking about workforce, somewhere along the 101 corridor makes sense because
Yeah.
they're commuting. right?
You're right.
You're not doing stuff in Temple Center,
Yeah.
right? You're going to Milford, to Peterborough, wherever, Nashua, I don't know.
Mhm.
And having to drive like way down the
So-
road doesn't make sense.
So I own a 3-lot subdivision right next to the highway, the state highway garage on 101.
Okay.
And but it needs a bridge to cross Blood Brook. That's why
Yeah,
my dad never
that's the
developed it.
point.
That's why we never developed it.
Yeah,
But it's an approved subdivision through this planning board from 15 years ago for a common driveway, 3-lot, and it's 9 acres. So, and it's enough frontage on 101, it's 900 feet of frontage. Tell me how that would be if that was a PRD workforce housing, what would the density, how would that work? It's a good like
It's a good test.
a test, yes.
So if we.
Then tell me how I put $100,000 bridge in.
Yeah.
It's almost 70 back then.
Well, yeah, I know.
yeah, should have done it then.
I know, should have.
We skip ahead to section D, which talks about form-based code and unlimited density for workforce housing. It's the end of. The PRD.
Mhm.
recommend. So what this would do is it would be based entirely on your soils. But also you're still in the PRD, so you would still have your 50% that has to go in conservation. So you have 5 acres, 4.5 acres left to work with. And if your soils are perfect, that would be maybe 1.5 units per acre. So I'm not gonna do that.
Well, call it 4. So you'd be
Those 6
6, yeah,
units.
I think you're right, yeah.
And so in this case, you could build, well, we just brought it back from 6 units per building to 5. You could build a 5-unit building that has a maximum footprint of 3,000 square feet, footprint, not area. 1.5 to 2.5 stories, so it would look like a big house. And then you could have, I guess, one standalone, a bump out, which wouldn't really be affordable to build the 6 unit, but you could have a 5-unit building on that.
Yeah, so that,
The problem.
and that's the place, I mean, that's 101. It's right by the highway garage.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like, it's not most desirable land, it's right, but that would be affordable house, that could be a, that's an example.
That is the whole property in 101 quarter, as far as temple ownership. You've got the brook that runs up. and
Yeah.
down.
It meanders all the way
Where
through.
it doesn't
What brook?
meander, the other side of the street is either sloping down or sloping up.
Uh-huh.
So that 101
It's not
corridor,
good.
other than, the fields that, Jeannie owns,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, and Lewis owns a nice field right after Keith Charlton's house.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's about it.
That's
as
about
far
it,
as
you're right.
About really developable land on the 101 corridor. So we keep talking about
Yeah,
it.
Tamposi's field, but that's in the Mountain District.
It's in the mountain district.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's very little land that will be conducive.
With
to-
frontage on 101. Yeah.
Correct.
Then you're looking at something like 45, well, is that?
Well, the town owns a 16-acre lot next to the elementary school,
Right.
some of which we want to protect because of the baseball field, but it goes back and there is already,
Temple Mountain Beef.
it's across the street.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm saying that's another
Yeah.
parcel that.
Oh, yeah.
would be-
Yeah.
Well,
Good
right
job.
where you used to
Right.
live on Mountain View,
Mhm.
that whole parcel that was just logged, that,
The 25
Good
acre
lot,
parcel.
I don't know how many times,
Yeah.
but yeah.
but I mean, that's a
That's a big
developable piece
parcel.
of land. You
That's
could
right.
build a lot of houses.
Switch.
That's actually Temple.
Ah.
Yeah, it's simple.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's actually that guy 20 years ago, and I've tried to reach him again.
I always thought
Oh, yeah.
that right next to the elementary school, that would be a perfect spot to have
Yeah.
a development.
I would look at the 16-acre lot next to the elementary school.
Right,
It's town owned, so
and
And
it's
then-
also on a main road.
it's on a main
Like-
road.
On 45.
There's potential for tapping into the water.
Mm.
That's,
That's true, there's water there.
Mhm.
well,
Needs that,
we can keep moving, but it's like, it's 12 minutes and 9,
Yeah, we do have a few other things we
so I don't know.
need to just quickly touch on.
We probably didn't get as far as you wanted.
That's okay. I feel like we made some good progress, so I guess just to kind of close out where we were. I don't know if we actually finished. If, just with density bonuses, do we want to explore a higher percentage than
Oh, that's right.
5% for workforce housing? In this part of this ordinance?
I would keep it at 25%
Okay.
myself.
I would agree.
I'm happy to keep that.
And then I will ask one more question on this section, so hopefully we don't have to revisit it next meeting. Were there any density bonuses that I threw in here that you didn't like? Not necessarily the amount, but the provision, so we have a small unit bonus, LID bonus, shared service bonus, workforce housing, and that's it. Are any of those you feel like we should just throw them out? And if it's a long discussion, we'll put a pin in it, but if.
Nothing for me.
No, I like that.
Yes, I'm fine with them.
Okay. Then I will say we made good progress tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Sorry, just quickly on, you got my stuff about the municipal building. Did I send this to everyone or just to Sarah, the pictures I took down there for our display?
So it's gonna be 2 11x17s on that bulletin board and then 2 anti-D size for the
So-
public events. I was a little bit confused. by
So I guess, so I took a picture, the big board right by the windows is 5.5 feet wide and 4 feet tall, but it's covered with stuff that probably has to be there.
that. Right,
Then there's the side wall, which also has stuff that probably has to stay there, visible. Then the wall where the window is and the half door has the town map, which I don't know if that needs to be up all the time. And then there's a sign on the window, which probably does need to be there. I can't remember what it was about, but I feel like it was some legal information. So my suggestion was that we put something here directing people to walk down the hall, because there's a big blank wall down heading towards the fire department door. There's nothing on it. There's plenty of space. So I think we put something in the lobby to entice them to walk down the hall and maybe look at something bigger. That's my suggestion. And then we don't disturb anything that is currently there that has to be there.
Yeah, that's probably the only workable way to do this.
Yeah. And that wall is huge.
So we need like a clown or something with a finger.
Perfect. I can explain that because I really didn't understand.
Okay.
Big arrow,
Sorry, I was pressed for
Big-
time.
must see material right here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
What would I like to?
I'll have the bi-monthly report to you by the end of the week,
great.
hopefully tomorrow.
Yep, thank
and
you.
where, how do we, was it the 20th, the next meeting,
It's on the agenda.
or 17th?
Is it not on the agenda?
17th,
Seven-
it's 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Students, yeah,
Yeah.
So
17.
where do we, what's our goal for that, Sarah? Because we're not gonna meet again after that until the third Tuesday in July.
Okay, that one is gonna be the third Tuesday of July.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, it's the first Tuesday where
It's holiday week.
it's holiday week anyway, but we recess.
It's totally fine.
In July and August, we don't meet the first meeting of the month.
Oh,
We just
both
need,
of them.
yeah, July and August, we just meet the third, one time.
Of course.
Well, for your next
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah.
One of them's away.
Oh, no, it's not the third. I meant the third Tuesday.
3rd Tuesday.
Yeah,
It's this.
So 13th, that's what I'm talking.
yeah.
If
Oh, because you have a meeting for that.
able to get you guys materials sooner, it has been challenging to do our 2-week turnaround. I
Mhm.
apologize, it's taking me so long. Can you guys send comments and questions back to Kathy, so we're not creating an illegal meeting, but then I could potentially have things so we can shorten the discussion on some of the items.
Mhm. Yep.
And then
Okay with that,
we can
Kathy?
get through more material at the next meeting.
I think we need to, because we don't have enough time.
Right.
It's a lot of work.
So on the rest of this document?
Yes, on the rest of the document, and I will have, a red line version for workforce housing, but like one of the things that I would really like feedback through Kathy is, whether you want that section D, that brand new section in the PRD, whether you want it at all, that's thing one. Thing two, if you want it, do you want it in the PRD or do you want it in the workforce housing ordinance? And this is where we're looking at form-based code and soil-based density. So those are things we will have to discuss in more detail, but if I could get any kind of initial feedback from you guys to help shape our conversation, it'll help the next meeting go a lot faster.
Okay,
All
sounds good.
right, you guys, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
I will not be here for the next meeting. I have a conflict.
So SolSmart,
I have,
Jim's not
he's
here.
not here, but I'll hand this out and we can look at it and come back for our next meeting.
So
Here's a copy for.
so just take this and be prepared to the next meeting to.
Yeah,
discuss it?
yeah, because, sorry, did I not give you one? Apologies for my messy handwriting. I corrected a couple things after I'd already printed and I didn't want to reprint. But this is just the checklist and I basically took their document, their language and created this for us. And made some notes on the next page. The stuff highlighted was questions. I don't know if it's accurate or not. But this doesn't change anything on in the current process, other than just enhancing the checklist. So there's no regulation change, there's no ordinances put in, it's just taking their input on what should be included on the checklist and putting it in ours. So this first 2 pages would be attached, which is essentially just instructions to the checklist. So for the next meeting, unless you,
No, I think,
I don't think we want to look at it right now.
no. Okay, Murray's not here, so.
He sent an email
He did,
and we can
we can vote.
vote on
We
it.
can vote, okay, so
Sure.
I make a motion to appoint Murray Colette as an alternate member of this planning board.
Second,
Matt, how do you vote?
Yes. Yes.
I vote yes.
yes,
Yes.
great.
Murray's our alternate. And we did invite Randy Martin to be an alternate, but he hasn't requested it, so.
Mhm.
And then The Howard Hill Road email, we spoke about that just a few minutes ago, that it's a back lot. And,
Did you both respond?
no, you know who responded was,
Russ responded.
Russ responded.
That's right.
Yep, right,
Okay.
yep, so they were, and invited them to come tonight if they wanted to as well.
Okay,
So I don't know, I'm gonna
That
look at,
just went under contract, so
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
either, I don't know if it was them or not.
they,
Over that weekend,
Yeah.
it went under.
they were out.
I don't know that Russ said, Russ probably should have said in the email, he didn't, maybe I can try to find it, but that they should reach out to the ZBA, because that's really their next,
Yeah, I think I responded to him too, and I said they'd have to go to the
did
ZBA.
you, okay, yeah. So that's that one, survey.
Yep, so that was due June first.
It was, and guess what? It's sitting on my desk.
And I highlighted the things that needed to be changed. I don't know if you want me to just do it or you want to do it, but.
I love you.
All right, I'll take care of that
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Thank you.
Anything else? The zoning stuff.
We talked
I'll
about
have to look at that.
GIS mapping. I did get okay, I just forwarded you guys tonight. The GIS, so
Oh,
this
the
Luke,
invoice.
Ullman,
Mhm.
we have the invoice for $7,800. Well, the contract was 98, we paid 2, and so I don't know if I'm supposed to forward that to,
I would send it to Russ.
so that's what I did, and Russ hasn't responded to me yet, but that doesn't
Okay.
mean he's not acting on this, but they are giving us, they had a question about the open spaces being, colored.
Mhm.
And I didn't know how to answer that, so I deferred to Russ, and then we have 30 days from May 28th.
To review.
To review, or else
Okay.
they just, they assume that we are okay with it, so
Mm.
I guess. Should I reach out to Russ and?
Yeah, we check with Russ,
Lean on
but
that?
it's good to have more than one person.
Yeah,
Review
I
it, that
was
was
reviewing
my-
it as well, because I told him I'd help with it.
Have been?
Oh.
Okay.
No, but I
You will?
tell him
Okay.
that I can
Okay.
review it. as
Okay.
well,
All right, I'll reach out to him on that. then.
whatever that is.
Okay,
Okay.
good, and everything else is just other business, I think we're. okay
Yeah, but they should be
right now.
voting
Yeah.
on some of those bills pretty
Yeah.
quickly, so pretty next few weeks, we'll know more.
Yeah.
Oh, the only other thing I wanted to mention is I sent an email to our attorney about reviewing the site plan regs, and he is not available till July.
Okay,
So I reached out to another attorney that he recommended, who said, no, thank you, not interested.
yeah. Sure.
So we haven't used Chris Drescher in a long time, or we'll just
He
wait
doesn't
to,
do-
yeah, I didn't.
Just
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 wait
wait
till
it.
July.
Let's
it's
wait
not
till
that
July.
far.
The only concern I have is if we get a new application from All Purpose,
Sure,
we have a draft of new regulations,
great.
which I think
Alright,
the
then.
law is that the new regs would apply if we had posted a hearing,
Right,
which we have not, so they would still follow the old regs. So,
So I gotta call Fieldstone about the sprinkler, and I gotta talk to Russ about, CAI technologies.
Yep.
Okay. That's fantastic.
I think that's work,
It is.
so,
Okay,
motion to adjourn,
second. Matt, how you vote?
Yes.
Yes. I vote yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Look at that,
All right, look at that.
9 o'clock.
Right on the money.
Very nice.
Yeah.